mattina mi sono da qua. Bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. La mattina mi sono stata.
Welcome to History Week 2021 from the ground up. Today I'm interviewing the president of FILEF, Claudio Marcello, and the secretary, Bruno Dibiase. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land, the Gadigal and Wangal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. This is Amy Czar, Coordinator of Community History for the Inner West Council. This is a series of interviews exploring, celebrating, commemorating, and sharing remarkable stories of Inner West community groups, which began as small seedling groups and have grown into fully fledged movements, which have brought about change in our community. Claudio, can I ask you about the early days in 1971 and 72, the location of your office on Parramatta Road, and what the activities, mission and purpose of FILEF was at that time?
FILEF is the Italian Federation of Migrant Workers and Families and was started in Australia, in Melbourne and then in Sydney in 1972. And there was a time of mass migration from Italy to many other countries of the world, and FILEF was started also in those countries. It was an initiative of the two main leftist parties in Italy, the Socialist and the Communist Party. And the main purpose was to make migrants aware of their rights as workers, to connect them with the unions. In fact, the unions had a great role in the beginning to promote the activities of FILEF. FILEF started a fortnightly paper called Nuovo Paese, New Country, in 1972. And the unions were helping to distribute the paper. Some of our volunteers were also distributing it outside the factories. And so that was the main area of interest, of activity, but was also done in cooperation, in connection with other migrant organizations. In the 70s, there were some major communities, Italians, Greeks, Yugoslavs, and later on Lebanese, that had their own associations, and some of them were more progressive and more involved with supporting integration of the people in the new country. Together, FILEF organized also a campaign to promote the teaching of Italian community languages as part of the curriculum in the schools, in alternative to the Saturday schools. And also for the bicentenary, FILEF organized the Migrants for Aboriginal Rights together with other progressive organizations for other migrant communities.
Can you talk about FILEF's connection to Leichhardt, the suburb, and Parramatta Road, Norton Street and Catherine Street, the time that FILEF active?
So FILEF started naturally in Leichhardt. That was the area where most of the Italian community was concentrated, and FILEF has been able over the years to carry out many activities, meetings, cultural events, with the support of Leichhardt Council, using their main hall. That was great for our events, and also being able to obtain grants to support, to finance our activities. Now, over the years, the initial aims of FILEF were obviously not current anymore, but gradually FILEF has been involved more and more closely with other not only other ethnic or community organizations, but also with groups that promote human rights in other countries. So, first of all, in Australia, naturally, with indigenous Australians, and again, with the support of the Leica Council, we've been able over the years to use first the Italian Cultural Center at the Italian Forum in Norton Street, and more recently in the Leica Library. And over the last few years, every month we've been able to run information nights on issues of progressive issues about the environment and on naturally human rights. As I was saying, mostly in cooperation with another organizations involved in human rights.
Claudio, thank you so much for sharing all this valuable information with us. We will now hear from Bruno Dibiase. Hi Bruno, can I ask you about the early days of FILEF in 1972? What was the location of the office and what were the activities' mission and purpose at that time?
Okay, the first FILEF office was in Norton Street, very close to the first bus stop as you turn from Parramatta Road, and just on the first floor. And on the street there were many Italian shops. There was an Italian jeweler, there was Das Carcella, who is still around in Norton Street but not there anymore. There was the shoemaker downstairs, then the butcher, there was the bar sport, which is still there. There used to be a pizzeria, Il Bolognese. Now, I mention this because these were all shops, or many of them anyway, were owned by people who were quite progressive and who actually helped FILEF quite a bit by giving us or helping us when we had some sort of barbecue, or like the butcher so would contribute. When we had some function, the man from La Fiorentina, which used to be a cake shop just across Norton Street, but on Parramatta Road, he also was very good and always gave us cakes and bread and so on. Right, so all these shops actually helped FILEF quite a lot. It may be useful to remind ourselves that at the time, that is in the 70s, the Italian community in Australia overall, but also, say, in Sydney at that time, was really the most numerous non-English speaking community. So there were many people, of course, working in factories, working by themselves, or in casual jobs, women and men. Women particularly in the sweatshops, and the men in metal work or building construction. Now, I myself joined FILEF in 1974, and I was a fairly recent arrival, but I could say that the part of the success of FILEF over the years has been precisely that kind of alliance, if you like, between the older migration and the newer migration, the people like myself, like at the tail end of the migration boom from Italy, who managed to work together in a quite harmonious way to advance as far as we could the rights of workers, particularly at the workplace, but also in society. So, like in terms of the structures like health centers or hospitals, even churches. I remember we once went together with some parents to ask an Italian priest, to do the mass in Italian. I mean, I'm not religious myself, but we certainly did that. So whichever problem happened to come up at the time. Initially, our work with Italian migrants was supported by Italian unions who helped pay the rent of the little office which we had together with INCA, which was the kind of the arm of the General Union of Labour in Italy. And this was important because many migrants, there was a fair bit of return migration, and when they went back, they had no rights accumulated here in Australia because there was no way that Australia would pay a pension in Italy at the time. Vice versa, those migrants who had already worked in Italy, they could not claim their own rights in terms of accumulations of towards pension. Okay, so one of the very early achievements, I think, where FILEF contributed, of course, we cannot say exactly was just an achievement of FILEF, but FILEF did give an enormous contribution towards achieving the bilateral agreement between Italy and Australia on pensions and social security. Now that's a very important thing where we campaigned. The Leica Town Hall was very kindly allowed for use by us from the Leica Council, and that was always really fantastic that we could do that. We collected signatures on petitions and so on. Other things like that we helped construct was certainly ethnic radio, ethnic TVs, SBS, and so on. We always sort of helped in that direction of having a greater presence, a greater voice for our communities, not only the Italian community, but also the other migrant communities. We worked very well together with other migrant groups, organizations, as well as, for instance, cultural events where our group, we formed a music group, Bella Ciao, performed together with the Chilean group Papalote, Turkish musician, Greek musician, and it was really quite fantastic to have those occasions where all these musicians came together from different cultures, because we were coming at the end of a period of assimilationism, of a fair bit of racism that is never missing, of course. And there was, after the Labour government of Whitlam in the early 72 to 75, there was quite an opening up towards all the communities in Australia, and diversity started to be recognized. So the primary goal of FILEF is then to assist Italian migrants in organizing themselves around issues and problems concerning them. And so this promotes their participation in all aspects of Australian society. The process encourages the integration of Italian migrant workers and their families within the host society and provide, let's say, the organizational conditions to enable them to defend and extend their rights along with the rest of the labor movement. Now, having this as an objective, it is certainly not surprising that FILEF has taken always traditionally an active part in initiatives aimed at improving the social, political, economic and industrial circumstances of migrant workers. And yes, and FILEF has campaigned constantly, not only for the rights of Italian migrants, but, as we've said, for the rights of all migrant workers as well, paying particular attention to the industrial rights of migrant workers, because it recognizes the union movement as a major vehicle for democratic change in Australia. Then, of course, we believe that the right to participate in the workforce is of the utmost importance to migrants. However, a person's rights should not be confined to the workplace, And so equally important is the right for migrants and their families to participate outside the workplace. Our relationship with the union, with the union movement in Australia was very fruitful. We kind of were a trade union, so a way of helping the unions on the one hand to understand their own migrant membership, and for us contacting more workers to be able to interpret their problems, as I said, not only at work but also in society and the families, in order to help. So it was a quite symbiotic relationship. We some unions even let us look at their list of members to work out which nationalities or which countries they might have been coming from. And they also gave us material, their own material to be translated in Italian. And then because we had contacts with other communities, with other community organizations, we got them often translated in different languages, especially on health and safety issues. In this campaign, we were very fortunate to actually be working from Leichhardt because the council was very receptive to what our needs were, and that is quite remarkable because really, I mean, the council did it because they were concerned about their community. I'd say it's remarkable because it was not quite clearly just a political issue for them. It wasn't a matter of getting votes because we did not vote at the time. In fact, still, if you are not a citizen, you don't vote. So, but nevertheless, the council was always extremely receptive, and we managed, for instance, to set up a conference, a public conference, about November '82, where the mayor of Leichhardt, Evan Jones, opened, and they were, apart from FILEF's main paper, there was Paul Whelan, the representative of Minister for Instruction, for Public Education, of New South Wales. The Italian consul was there. There were teachers. There was Franca Arena, who was president of. She was a state senator at the time. She was president of the committee, of the consultative committee for the Minister of Multiculturalism. There was the Teachers Federation, of course, academics from Sydney University, and so on. Now, that was an extremely successful conference, and soon after that, a number of programs became a reality in the school. They were no longer just a small thing on Saturday or something like that, but they were part of the general program of the school.
Can you talk a bit about FILEF's activities in the realms of education and culture?
Around FILEF, there was a whole number of teachers of Italian origin who also helped in this campaign, and they helped, and we helped them, and they helped us to create materials for the school, to create publications that about language and dialect, and so. And events in the schools, such as the Bella Ciao teaching folk songs and Italian children's song to the children. This work continued over quite some time, and in the 90s we also managed to put together a program for between holidays, or between terms. When there was school term break, then we had a program which we called Vacanza Scuola, school holiday, which were kind of immersion programs, immersion in the sense that all the activities were done in Italian, so they play and a little bit of teaching, some songs and poetry, and the children did theater. The parents came and helped. We also took them out for excursions. We took them around Laika to eat pizza, to look at gelato making, and so on. So that was quite positive. Unfortunately, of course, as the community became older and children were already in their third generation, then it was much more difficult to continue that kind of activity. We believe, like many other migrant organizations, the teaching of community languages is a very important contribution to the school system and to the maintenance of the languages in Australia.
In conclusion, what would you like to say about FILEF's time and contribution in the local community?
Well, just to conclude this part, I think it would be fair to say that FILEF has given a quite positive contribution and continues to give a positive contribution to the construction of a multicultural Australia that is proud of its diversity.
Thank you for joining us for this History Week podcast from the ground up. The Inner West Community History Collection holds the FILEF Community Archive, along with many other community groups' collections, including Save Roselle Bay, Saving Ballast Point, The Third Runway, A History of Events, the Izzy Weiner Collection, the Snowden and the Peter Reynolds Collection, amongst many others. You can access all of these via the Inner West Library catalogue.